Lucy, not many young people, let alone girls, find their way into a sport like mountaineering. What led you down this path?
I always have just loved the outdoors and been drawn to the adventure that it holds. And mountains were just the ultimate kind of manifestation of that. When I was really young, my family was always has been really adventurous and loved to do road trips all around the country and just get outside. And give my brother, I have a younger brother, and I just opportunities to really like find what we love and our place in the outdoors. We just kind of happened upon this thing called high pointing, which is climbing to the top of every state in the US. And we just happened upon the first one and we were like, wow, this is so awesome. So we started to kind of rack up and start doing some of these high points. And me and my brother were homeschooled. I was homeschooled until like sixth grade. So that kind of gave us the opportunity to travel throughout the year, which was really fun. Just go all around the country, hitting these high points, and that's when I really fell in love with mountaineering. Is doing those.
Yeah. So now you're out there breaking records and doing things that nobody has ever done before. Many of your climbs have done exactly that. They've broken records, but you say they're really not about breaking records for you. It's about pushing your limits. Like you started when you were really young doing this. Talk to us about that transition from high pointing to, I mean, high pointing the highest mountain on earth. Is it about breaking records? Is it about pushing your limits? And talk to us about that journey.
It's definitely kind of changed. Like my purpose in mountaineering has changed a lot throughout the years. And it really continues to change almost with, not with every mountain I do, but it changes a lot. Every mountain teaches me so much. So when I was little, I was just doing it because of that like love for adventure. And I just, love nature and just being outside. And I honestly, when I was little, I had no intention of doing all 50. I was just kind of going along with it. I was like, 7, 8, 9 years old, like no, no future plans. But then eventually, when I did Mount Rainier when I was 11 years old, after that mountain, I was like, this is so like I think I could do all 50. And then that's when I kind of was like, wow, the youngest girl to do all 50 was 17, and I was 11 at the time. So I was like, I have a lot of time to maybe become the youngest. So that's when I really kind of got that passion and goal to try to break that record. And that was definitely my motivation for a lot of like my high pointing. But then after that, my focus after breaking that record, like it was an amazing experience. It was really cool. But I realized like, record breaking is not all that's out there, and it's not all about just breaking records. And if it was like, I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't love it as much as I do. So my reasons for climbing have definitely developed recently into more of like really wanting to push my limits and not just only going for the summit, but just going to see, what I can do physically and mentally and emotionally, because the mountains test all of those things like to your very limits. So that's kind of how that's developed. And I think just maturing and getting older is kind of given me that mindset switch.
It's interesting. You see a lot of world class performers who have that mindset, this mindset of, let's see how well I can do, right? Let's push my limit. And obviously, it goes without saying that there's a summit that you want to achieve. There's, for the Olympic athlete, there's an Olympic gold medal that they want to win. We know that is out there, but really it's about maximizing potential and pushing and doing as well as you can possibly do. And it's kind of this dual mindset of this conundrum, but if you can kind of let go of the outcome and focus on the process, I see that world class performers really kind of embrace that mindset, and it sounds like you're doing that already at such a young age, and with such an amazing career still ahead of you, Lucy.
Thank you.
You have this mantra: limits are perceived. What do you mean by that, and how did you come to believe that?
I've come to believe that just through personal experience in the mountains. Like when I look back on some of these mountains and kind of just think about all I went through, like days and days of carrying, super heavy packs. Like, how did I do that? Like, I look back and I'm like, there's no way I did that. But then in the moment, it's just one foot in front of the other, just like taking it moment by moment. And like looking back, I'm like, wow, like if someone were to tell me, oh, you'd climb Everest at age 18, I'd be like, no way. I wouldn't, like, personally, I would like put a limit on myself and be like, oh, I don't think I could do that. But then in the moment, I'm like, well, I could do it. I did do it. So I feel like, or I definitely believe, like your limits are what you tell yourself they are. There, a lot of the times you can do so much more than you think you can do, and that's just like the human way. Like your mind will give out before physically you will in almost all cases. So just having that mindset of, I'm not going to let my mind limit me. I'm going to do, just see the best and do as much as I can in this moment is kind of how I have accomplished a lot of what I've accomplished.
So there's putting one foot in front of another when you're on the mountain, but you decided to put yourself in this situation long before that. Like you had to make a logical, conscious decision with a lot of, time and planning in front of you to actually, attempt a Denali or a K2 or an Everest. Like what, describe like the decision making or the process that you go through. I mean, to have the level of confidence to be able to say, yes, I know nobody has ever done this before. Nobody has ever, high pointed every single high point in the United States, you know, before, until a certain age. I think I can do it. Why? What makes you think that you could do it?
Honestly, it's just belief and saying yes. Like sometimes uh I'm kind of proud of being a little bit crazy, I think. Like sometimes you just have to say yes and have no idea if you could actually do it or not. But if the opportunity presents itself, like that's one of the kind of like another mantra I live by is like say yes to the opportunities that present itself. Because I mean, I'm a really strong Christian and I believe, that God puts things in your life for a reason. So like if you let opportunities pass you up, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. Like that's just a wasted opportunity. So like I didn't know if I could do Everest. I didn't know if I could do Denali, but when those opportunities arose, I was like, well, I gotta believe in myself and try at least.
And you've tried and you've not always succeeded, right? I mean, there's been failures along the way, right? I mean, I think, was it 2017 when you attempted Denali and failed? Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, going along with like saying yes to everything and like putting yourself in those situations where you don't know if you're going to succeed or not. There's always going to be times where you don't. And that's what happened when I was 13 years old on Denali. I went up, made it to high camp, and it was a situation I had never done a mountain like Denali. It
And
was
you're 13 years old. You're on Denali, and by the way, for the listener, this is the highest point in the United States. It's in Alaska, also known as Mount McKinley. And you're 13 years old. How old was the youngest female to summit Denali before you?
I think it was around my age
Okay.
for the youngest female to summit, but the youngest female, my goal was to become the youngest female to do all 50 state high points, and that the youngest woman to ever do that was 17. So I
Okay.
was gonna break that record by a good amount, the one I was
So
going.
you're okay. So you're on Denali. Go ahead. I
Mhm.
interrupted you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's Denali's a 3 week expedition where you literally fly straight onto the glacier and you don't see green for 3 weeks. It's literally just the glacier and some rocks, and that's about it. And you're carrying, the 40, 50 pound backpack on your back, and then also another like 50 pounds behind you in a sled. They say it's about 100 pounds in total between your backpack and your sled, and you're all roped up on a team the whole time, connected to other people. It's a super serious mountain. And before that, the longest climb I'd done was like 4 days. I'd never, flown straight onto a glacier. I'd never been in that situation before. I had to carry that much weight. So it was very out of my comfort zone. And when I got on there, I was like, oh my gosh, like I might be a little unprepared for this. But
And you're 13 years old. I mean, did everybody on the expedition look at you like, "Oh, geez, we got this weak link here." I mean, how did you feel as a 13-year-old girl on this trip? And in a male dominated sport.
Yeah, actually, just to get on Denali was such a difficult time. I had to go all the way to Kilimanjaro and climb the tallest mountain, which is in Tanzania in Africa, and to climb that, which is 19,000 feet, to prove my body could handle altitude. Because every single guide company we reached out to, like say we want to climb Denali, wouldn't let me on, like wouldn't take me because I was too young. And then finally, like after a lot of convincing, this one guide company said, if you prove that your body can handle altitude, like climb a mountain over 18,000 feet, which is there's no mountains in the continental U.S. It's a difficult thing to do. That a mountain find a mountain over 18,000. And then also I had to make my own team, so they wouldn't like put me on a pre-planned team. I had to like reach out and find people that were willing to climb with me. So everyone on luckily like we found three other people that were willing to climb with me and my dad. Um, so they knew what they were getting themselves into. But yeah, I definitely felt like it's been hard, being like a young woman in the mountains and like a really young girl at that time. So there's it's just like you're underestimated a lot, even when you are on when you get on a team, even when you're on the mountain. You're just you are seen as the weak link for sure, and it takes just so much more effort to prove it. Like you have to, I always would like volunteer for jobs that no one wanted to do and try to like work extra hard to really prove myself as an equal member of the team, because that was something that's really important to me. One of the things I never want to like be seen as that person that other people have to like compensate for or like pull up the mountain. I want to do it on my own and be an equal member.
Yeah. And that's going to happen to any mountaineer as it is. I mean, there are, elite mountaineers who become the weak link for whatever reason, right? Whether it's altitude or injury or something else, your body just reacts at different times, different ways. So,
Mhm.
so that kind of thing is going to happen. But I imagine you have this mindset of like, I just have to do the extra, prove myself. And for the listener, I want you to think about this in your own life. Like, think about Lucy's mindset, putting herself out there as a 13-year-old girl to do this amazing feat, and think about yourself, like whether it's, you're feeling some insecurity around, you know being at a certain level in your company, or attempting a certain, setting a certain goal that you have in your life, whether it's in your business life or your or hobbies, or whatever else it might be. Like you can do this. Like you can take this mindset of like Lucy talked about, saying yes, even if you have no idea whether or not you can do it. Because listen, failure is just part of the journey. I mean, especially in mountaineering. So this was an expedition that did not succeed. Am I right?
Yeah, so we made it all the way up to high camp. Honestly, every day I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do the next day. It was absolutely exhausting. But we ended up, 19 days later, we were at high camp, which is around 17,000 feet, and the top of Denali is 20,300. So we had just one more day to the summit, and we, had a plan to leave that night to go to the summit, but unfortunately, our guides had to go on a rescue mission for a man that was stranded high above us. And unfortunately, the man died. They weren't able to
Wow.
rescue him successfully. But after that, everyone went down. There was a big storm coming in the day after. So we didn't even, get to attempt to go to the summit, which was really heartbreaking for me because, I'd put so much energy and effort. Like my parents had invested money and time. It was pretty devastating, especially not to be even able to try. It's like one thing if it's in your control, like you're the one who has to turn around, but if it's something like out of your control, it almost makes it, a little bit worse. Like, oh man, maybe I could have done that, but I didn't get to do it. So I definitely went through a bit of a crisis after Denali. Like I wasn't sure if I wanted to mountaineer anymore, because you can give everything you have, and just there's so many uncontrollables in the
Mm.
mountains. Everything you could do everything right, and you could still not really reach that summit. So it was a difficult time for me, and I didn't know if I wanted to mountaineer anymore. And I took kind of a year to think about it. But then the mountains just started calling me again. Like when you really find your purpose, I don't think anything can really keep you from that.
Mm.
So I just felt like called to the mountains again and just needed to go back. And I finally kind of like got that mindset switch where I'm like, okay, the summit is, amazing. Like ultimately, of course, you want to get to the summit, but the goal isn't just the summit. It's to push those limits and just to do what you can do, control the things that you can control and do as much as you can with that. And then, the rest is not in your hands and you have to accept that.
And so again, for the listener, think about this in your life. Think about something that you've attempted, that you failed, and it was stolen from you. It was taken from you just by something that you have no control over. Whether it's in your job, it's the economy or your boss or something else in life like that you don't have control over. Like Lucy went through like Lucy's a human being with real feelings, even though she's achieved all these world class accomplishments and set all these records. Like real human being experiences failure, experiences it in the same way that you and I do. She got up eventually, got herself back up, and went out there and attacked things again. So everything from there on out's been easy and success and no failures from there on out. Is that right, Lucy?
No, not true. Definitely not true. And I mean, it definitely depends on the way you define failure as well. Like, honestly, after Denali, even though there's been mountains that I haven't reached the top of, like K2 this past summer, I didn't reach the top of K2, but like,
And just sorry for reference, real quick to interrupt. Like for the listener, K2 is the second highest mountain in the world. It's widely considered the hardest mountain in the world to summit. So this is the hardest mountain in the world to summit. You attempted it, and can you talk to us a little bit about that expedition?
yeah, so I was on the mountain for about 40 days. And for most of those days, I was just sitting at base camp because the weather was absolutely horrible. It was a really difficult climbing season for K2. I made it up to base camp. Um, it was like an 8-day trek up to base camp. And then basically, to climb these mountains, you have to wait for this this team of that sets the fixed ropes up to the summit. So that's, safe enough for you to climb up those ropes. And that didn't happen because of the weather till the very, very end of the climbing season. So everyone that was on the mountain was like going for the summit at the same time. And it was just some pretty awful conditions. I mean, we were right behind the fixed rope team and they thought like every day they're like, we might have to turn around. And then if they turn around, like your expedition's over. You can't continue. So every day it was like, we didn't know if we were going to be able to continue or not, if the expedition was over. But by the end, on summit day, they went up and were able to make it to the summit. But unfortunately, because there's so many people up there at that time, and the snow conditions were really dangerous because there was a lot of snow, which means that there's a lot of avalanche danger. So unfortunately, someone died on the way up. There's a big kind of scandal around it. Lots of controversy in the mountaineering world around this man's death, because so many people like walked over him on their way to the summit while he was still alive. And it was a very complicated situation. So on summit day, I was going up and because of all the people ahead of me, I was in a pretty big avalanche, which was definitely, very scary. Luckily, it wasn't big enough to bury me completely. I was only buried up to like mid thigh. Uh,
Wow. So
yeah,
an avalanche hit you. Like did you get tumbled or tell us about that moment.
yeah, it was, I mean, it was really scary. There's a lot of different types of avalanches. So, like, some of the main concerns is there's like ice chunks in the avalanche. Luckily, this one was just like a powder avalanche and not super like thick, heavy powder that can bury you. It was, we were really lucky that it wasn't bigger. And luckily, I didn't tumble or anything. Like, we saw it coming down, just this huge white cloud. And we like ducked, covered our necks and heads as best we could. And then when we realize there's no ice chunks, you start to try to swim to like stay on the surface because like if it tries to bury you. But luckily it wasn't big enough. We never actually had to swim or tumbled or anything. We were just buried up to like mid thigh. But dug ourselves out, and but after that we decided, once there's one avalanche, it's pretty easy to have more avalanches, especially in those conditions. So we decided to turn around, that it wasn't safe enough for us.
Wow. Wow. So Lucy, we've heard about some of your failures and there's a lot of, uncertainty in the mountains. This is not something where there's uncertainty like for most of us going about our jobs where the uncertainty might be maybe we don't get the deal or we don't get the promotion. I mean, this is life and death on the
Mhm.
line here. But can you tell us about summiting Everest? You became the youngest female to summit Everest.
Yeah. That was, I mean, there's so many highs and lows in the mountains, and that was definitely one of the big highs. That was just the whole expedition went so smoothly. The weather was great. My body felt great, reacted to the altitude really well. I never used oxygen before that, so that was definitely something that was new, but I handled that well as well. And yeah, I mean, we got up. It was a total of 27 days that we were on the mountain, me and my Sherpa, and we made it to the summit. It was absolutely beautiful summit day. And yeah, it was everything just went so smoothly, and it was one of the most beautiful, probably the most beautiful climb I've ever done, and
Mm,
definitely just the most like significant. I mean, getting to the top of the world, it's a feeling like no other. It was amazing. I don't even like have the words to describe it, but
yeah.
yeah.
For the listener, we'll have a link to Lucy's Instagram and the action plan. But on her Instagram, she has a little selfie video of her when she summited Everest on the top of the world. It'll give you chills to watch it. It's just fascinating. Lucy, you have to go through so many of these hard times and the failures and face the uncertainty to have this great experience, like to have this relatively easy summit day and clear, and the weather was great and everything was perfect. But you have to go through so many of those failures to get there, and it's the same for you, the listener, is to understand that yeah, you're gonna go through a lot of failures to get the breaks, right? To have things actually go your way, and to put in all the training and the preparation, etc. Um, do you have any strategies, or how do you approach the pain and suffering that goes into something like mountaineering? I mean, you talk about the 8-day trek. I mean, an 8-day trek just to get the base camp, right? You're talking about 40 days waiting on K2. You talk about, the well, I mean, we didn't really talk about the journey up Everest, like step by step. You've got, you know, threat of avalanches. I mean, are there mindset strategies here that you've learned or that you use, or frameworks that you approach things, like when you feel like you said at one point, like, I didn't know if I could make it the next day? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you manage that? How do you have self-talk that you do, or mindset strategies?
There's definitely self-talk for sure. I mean, when you're on these mountains, it's a pretty like you're pretty a lot of solitude. Because I mean, sometimes you're roped up and the next person is, 10 to 20 feet away from you. Or sometimes it's just because, you don't have the breath to even talk. You have lots of layers on, it's hard to hear. Usually the wind, the elements keep that. So you're in your mind all the time. Sitting in your tent, climbing up the mountain, you're always in your mind. So your mindset is key. I always say like mountaineering is 90% just mental. And you just have to tell yourself that you can do it. Like I'm such like the definition of an optimist for sure. And that's helped me so much. Like just, always saying like, I can do this, I can do this. And, not thinking about, if you can do it the next day, thinking about, I can do, this next step, breaking it into those small little steps is very, very helpful. And then, when you're sitting at base camp, that's one of the most difficult times for me because I'm used to just, go, go, go with my life, especially like being in college, being a student athlete, that's just always going. And then, on all my vacations, I'm usually trying to climb a mountain or two, so it's a busy life. But I'm trying to be thankful for wherever I am. Like when I'm sitting on the mountain, I'm like, I'm gonna be wishing that I had all this free time when I'm a month from now. So I just try to be thankful and see the good in wherever I am. And sometimes the good is the pain, It's that's one of the big reasons I climb is to push myself and for that pain because I mean, the mountains, you'll experience pain like like nowhere else, That's the place to be if you want to push yourself and experience that. And I just every time I try to handle it a little bit better, and that's really my goal in it.
And for the listener, that may or may not be your default mindset. I mean, certainly Lucy is an optimist, and if your default is negative self-talk, you have to override it. You have to actually have words and mantras and things that you can say to yourself in those moments. And you actually have to be aware in those moments. Like if you're not aware, yes, your mind is going to drift to the negatives, all the things that are going wrong, have gone wrong, could go wrong, how tired you are, how much this is, how painful this is. You have to override. You have to consciously make the effort to override this. It doesn't always just happen. Lucy, what's your training like leading up to a big expedition like this, like a K2 or an Everest?
My training is probably different from basically every other mountaineers, just because I've never lived near mountains. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, pretty flat, and then in high school in the Chicago suburb, and now LA has more mountains, but it's hard to get to being in college. So my training actually doesn't really involve mountains at all. I'm also a runner, so I've been a runner since I was 6 years old, and that's a passion that pretty much equals my mountaineering passion. I love running so much, and I ran competitively since first grade and in college and everything. I'm a runner right now, so that's continuing. but
Yeah.
I've actually used that running pretty much exclusively as my training for mountaineering, and my running program was super intense in high school, so it prepared me really well. We were state champions, 3 times in a row. Got second at nationals my freshman year, so it was a very intense program. So it's not like go out and run a few miles. It's like very intense workouts, long runs. So that really keeps me in really good shape for the mountains. And then also, especially in college with the running program, we have lifting programs that go with it, and that's also key for mountaineering because you got to be able to carry those heavy backpacks and power up some pretty difficult sections, big steps. So that has also, like, the running kind of gives me that cardio endurance, that keeps me going, and then the weightlifting gives me that power I need. So yeah, that's pretty much my training leading up to big climbs.
So considering all of the training, all of the planning, all of the investment that goes into an expedition, your why has grown over the years. It's not just about high pointing and checking off summits. You talked about how it's about pushing yourself, and there's even more behind this now, right? You're on a mission to inspire the next generation to fight for gender equity. You're fighting for clean water. There are bigger things driving you now behind this. Is that right?
Yeah, that's become a big part of my purpose, especially in recent years. Before and since Everest. And kind of growing up, I definitely realized, the gender gap in the mountains. I realized that more and more. And recently it's changing a lot, which is really a positive thing to see. But it's still something that there's a big gap. So just fighting for that through my climbing, what I think is that, you have to, it's much easier to, pursue a path like mountaineering when you see that other women and people like you, or whoever is like you, have done it before. It's a lot easier once that path is set. So that's, what I'm trying to do with my mountaineering is, set the path for young women, especially young women, because there's definitely more women in the mountains now, but I still haven't met really I haven't met anyone on these big mountains that's my age and also a girl doing this. So it would just be amazing to be able to see, the next generation and my generation too, just be able to be in the high mountains. And there's a lot of barriers to it for sure. Money and just not having the right path. But I believe that could happen, and I hope my story, not only inspires other people to pursue that, but also kind of breaks those barriers and like stereotypes of, oh, you have to be like some big strong man to be able to climb, because you don't.
Yeah. And tell us about your mission to provide clean water.
I've been passionate about the water crisis from a really young age. I've had a pen pal that lives in Uganda since I was like 4 years old. I mean, I actually got in touch with her when I was two, but it was just our parents writing back and forth then. We were so young. But I became really good friends with this girl, and her family didn't have access to clean water. So when I was like 10, I kind of learned about this whole crisis, which was really eye opening, especially at that age, because, as a 10-year-old living in the US, I thought everyone had like a sink and faucet and water just at their fingertips like we do. But learning that they don't was just really like really distressing. Like I was scared for her and her family. And then ever since then, I have been involved with this nonprofit organization called Water Step that makes chloration devices that can clean water in countries that or in any place that doesn't have safe water. So I've been able to go to fundraise through my mountaineering and go and just use that platform. And I've been able to go to Uganda twice now, Kenya also twice, and be able to do some water projects over there, like a fish pond, putting in water step chlorinators, providing bleach makers, just working on that water and sanitation, which is so pivotal over there. So it's been amazing. And I started a brand around my mountaineering and around the water cause. And it's so cool to see how that has grown and really impacted a lot of people's lives. So hoping to continue to expand that for sure.
Lucy, how old are you again?
I'm 19,
19.
almost 20.
Inspiring. Everything that you're doing, that you've done, the mission that you have, like the bigger vision that you have is absolutely incredible for anybody, let alone a 19-year-old. So kudos to you. It's absolutely fascinating getting inside of your head for a little bit and learning from you. Uh, for the listener that wants to take action in their own life, any action items that you can recommend? Maybe they have big goals or big dreams, but they put them on a shelf, or maybe they have fear or
Mhm.
uncertainty about chasing something. I mean, what action items can you recommend they could take in the next, say, just 24 to 48 hours?
I'd say the first thing, definitely start with mindset. Like you were saying, that mindset is key. And honestly, since Denali, like even on K2, I haven't seen like not reaching the summit as a failure at all. Because in that moment, when that moment I had to turn around, I was not sad. I was happy because I knew like I had pushed myself so much. I was so proud of the work I put in. It was an absolutely beautiful scene, just all around with the sun rising. Like I had accomplished everything that, I mean, not everything. The summit was definitely, part of the goal, but like in that moment, I was just so proud of myself. And when you kind of can take that mindset where it's like, this is my goal, but if I do all these things to get to it, if I do everything I can do, I'm going to be happy no matter what the outcomes. Like I'm going to be proud of myself. That it just eliminates that fear of um, that fear of the unknown. And that's something that has helped me in running as well. Like going into races, I used to get very bad anxiety before races, but just being like, I'm just going to do everything I can do. And, the outcome, that's not something I can control is the ultimate outcome. So I think having that mindset, just working on that, and it's something that, you can consciously start working on, but it does take a while to actually get. So but trying to like make that flip and start thinking like that, I'd say that's first. And then I'm a very like, I don't know, I like to write things down. Like if I just think of things, it'll be gone the next day for me. So I think like physically, like writing down your like top goals, your priorities, because there's only so much time in a day, So like writing down those top priorities that you have right now, and then the failures that you're scared will happen with those, and then how you overcome those are key. And just yeah, thinking about that failure aspect though, because there will definitely be failures, and just knowing how you're going to overcome those, even beforehand is would be a great thing. I try to do that before I go into mountains. So yeah.
Incredible. Lucy, where can people find you, follow you, etc.?
I'm most active on my Instagram. So what's next Lucy is my Instagram that I use a lot. I also have a TikTok, which I'm not as active on, but it's also called What's Next Lucy. And I have a website also that, list all my social medias. I also have an Etsy shop, which I'm going to be like rebranding, redesigning soon. So there's going to be some new sweatshirt designs out there, and t-shirts and different items like that. So lucyclimbs.com is my website if you want to learn more about my story or find me on any social medias.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Lucy, for making time to come on the show and sharing your story.
Of course. Thank you.